Hi guys, I'm back with another video to give some advice to our veterans out there who are looking to get compensation for service-connected disabilities. Not just service connection, but also if you're already service-connected, you want to get an increased rating. Today we're going to be talking about two types of hearing disabilities, bilateral hearing loss disability and tinnitus or tinnitus. Some people pronounce it differently. We're going to talk about how you can get service-connected for each of them and how increased ratings work for each of them. So stay tuned. Okay, before I go into it, I want to thank all the veterans for their service. Hopefully this video can provide some clarity about how you can get service connected for hearing loss or tinnitus. I know sometimes there may be some confusion about how the process works with VA, but hopefully this video provides some kind of clarity. Okay, so we're going to start with tinnitus because tinnitus is a pretty straightforward disability. It can be service connected based on your lay statements, and there's only one level of rating associated with it. So I'm going to talk about that and get it out the way because hearing loss is a little bit more complicated than tinnitus. I want to get the tinnitus out of the way. So if you don't already know, tinnitus is a disability that is exhibited by ringing in the ears. And it's basically subjective. So there's no test to say, yes, you have tinnitus, no, you don't. It's basically based off of the layperson, you being the veteran statement saying that I've had ringing in my ears. What I normally see is that there may be veterans who were in the Air Force and they said, I worked on the flight line. I didn't have the benefit of hearing protection or very minimal hearing protection. Therefore, I've had ringing in my ears. I never talked about it because I just thought it, would go away. I didn't think it was a big idea. I've had it since service separation until the time that I made the claim, and therefore I should be service connected for it. As long as there's not basically blaring evidence to the contrary to say that you didn't have ringing in your ears since service, more than likely VA is going to grant the claim for tinnitus. There are certain circumstances where, let's say after service, there have been hearing checks and the veteran has claimed on numerous occasions that there have been no symptoms of tinnitus, then that's going to be a hard obstacle to overcome to say that, it's been continuous in service. So it's like I said, as long as there's been continuity of symptoms and no contradictory evidence of, oh no, there hasn't been ringing in my ears since service, you're probably going to get service connected for tinnitus. And what happens is after you get service connected for tinnitus, you get assigned a rating. The rating for tinnitus is one rating, 10%. So it's kind of like you either get it or you don't. It's usually fruitless to try to apply for increased rating for tinnitus because there's no other higher level that you can go to. So I would caution you if you could try, I want higher than 10%. It's really no other higher than 10% on the schedule of rating. Now, if you say that you want extra schedule of consideration, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Most likely, I haven't seen many cases where extra schedule consideration has been granted for tinnitus. So you got 10%, take it and keep it moving. So comment below. Let me know how many of you guys, where have you worked? Have you claiming tinnitus? Have you worked in the Army? Which branch of the government? Of the military, Army, Coast Guard, Air Force, Navy? I don't want to forget anything. But comment below. I want to let you know. I want to see where you guys are coming from to say, okay, this is why I have tinnitus, because it doesn't always have to be from the flight line. It could be from, I was in the Army, I was infantryman, I was practicing shooting the guns, and I didn't have any hearing protection, and that's why I have tinnitus. So let me know below so that you can get a better feel about where people are coming from in their various claims for tinnitus. Okay, let's move on to bilateral hearing loss disability. And this is, like I said, a little bit more complicated because you have to meet certain requirements to be service connected for it. You don't always have to have a medical opinion, but you do have to have evidence of a VA hearing loss. And basically, once you find that you have a VA hearing loss that's service connected, then you get rated based on the level of severity. So let's start with the basics, though, because what I often see when veterans submit their claim for hearing loss, they say they have hearing loss and then they get tested. They do an audiogram and it comes back to say that, yes, their hearing loss has diminished, but they don't have hearing loss that raises to the level of hearing loss for VA disability purposes. And some veterans like, no, I can't hear as good as I used to, so why can't I get it? let's break it down. If you've seen my other videos, I always refer to the Federal Veterans Laws, Rules, and Regulation book because it defines everything. And this is how things are defined for VA purposes for compensation. So if you look at 38 CFR section 3.385, disability due to impaired hearing. It's going to define what impaired hearing is. It's not based on what you feel like I can't hear as good as I used to. They're going to actually tell you what it's defined as. And I'm going to read it for you directly so you'll know, oh, okay, so I don't have, bad enough hearing to qualify for a VA disability. That's why I denied. No need to appeal that because it's really no way around it. So for the purposes of applying the laws administered by VA, impaired hearing will be considered to be a disability when the auditory threshold in any of the frequencies 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 hertz is 40 decibels or greater, or when the auditory threshold for at least three of the frequencies 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 hertz are 26 decibels or greater, or when speech recognition scores using the Maryland CNC test are less than 94%. So it gives you three different ways that they're going to say this is hearing loss. 40 decibels or higher in any of those frequencies. If you have three of those frequencies that have 26 and above in decibels, or if the speech recognition scores are less than 94%. If you don't meet any of those criteria, at minimum, you will not qualify for a service connection. Service connection is based off of a current disability, something that occurred in service, and a connection between the two. If you don't have that first prong, current disability, VA is going to deny your claim based off of a lack of current disability. So make sure at minimum, yes, you may have hearing loss, but it doesn't rise to the level that I just described that's found in the CFR. So make sure that's kind of the bare minimum. Let's move on to what happens when you want to make the connection between, yes, I have established that I have a current disability, and I want to say that this current disability is related to something in service. Okay, so similar to tinnitus, when I talked about earlier about tinnitus, you have to have something that happened in service. And let's say you may have noticed your hearing had diminished in service, or you maybe haven't. Just as long as you have a connection between your current disability and service, you can still be service connected for it. What I notice happens is that veterans say, oh, I had hearing loss in service. I didn't complain about it. And then 25 years pass before they make a claim for hearing loss, and they want to show the connection between service and now. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get service connected for it, but you really need to make the connection. It's called a nexus statement to say that, yes, I have hearing loss now and is related to something that happened over 25 years ago. So what is usually familiar is you look at the separation exam and see if between entry to service and separation from service, if there's been a change of threshold of your hearing. Has your hearing diminished from the time you started service to the time you were discharged? That usually is an indicator that, okay, there's something that happened during service that caused my hearing to diminish. Sometimes you may not have an entrance exam audiogram that you can compare to the separation. That's okay, but that is one way that you can establish service connection if you show a change, a significant change in threshold from entry to separation. Another way to establish that there is a connection between your hearing loss now and service is to kind of look at the Veterans DD 214 form and look on the MOS, the Military Occupational Specialty. Let's say it would make it a lot easier if it doesn't say that you were, let's say, a typist because you were inside and weren't exposed to loud noises, right? That could have just been your MOS and you could have been out in the field doing something else, right? But to make it easier for the explanation of your disability, I look at the MOS on the DD 214, getting tongue-tied. And if it says something like infantryman or flight line, those are kind of like blaring things. Those have a high probability of high noise exposure. And that makes my job a little easier to say, okay, he or she has some kind of exposure to loud noises, which would likely explain why they have some problems now. What I do next is move on and say, okay, what did you do after service? Because yes, you could have had some exposure during service. Maybe it didn't even affect your hearing. But after service, let's say you worked in construction. If there's evidence that you worked in construction and you didn't have the benefit of hearing protection, that kind of makes your claim a little bit less likely that whatever you're experiencing now is related to service versus something that happened after service. So you want to make it very clear, no, I worked in service and I was exposed to these loud noise. After service, I worked basically in the library. You don't have to say library, but basically to say like, no, nothing happened after service. I didn't ride loud motorcycles. I didn't have a construction job. I didn't have something that I was firing all the time. Nothing like that to say that this is another possible explanation why my hearing is diminished and not anything related to service. So I'm going to move on real quick because I don't want this video to be too long, but I'm going to move on to how VA rates once you get service connected for bilateral hearing loss or right ear hearing loss or left ear hearing loss, how VA rates it. So you go back to the handy dandy rating code, and the diagnostic code for hearing impairment is diagnostic code 6100. And basically it takes the audiogram that you undergo to say what your ears are rated as, and it says assigns a number to them. And based on that number, you're assigned a certain rating. So it starts as non-compensable, so that'll be a 0. It shows that you do have hearing loss, but not to the extent that it's going to be rated as compensable. And then it goes all the way up to 100%. I have not seen many people that have 100%. Likely, I've seen people have 10, 20% more. You know, that's the more popular rating because their hearing is severe, but not too severe. So when people say, "Oh, I think I should be rated for hearing loss at 50%," if you look on this chart, 50% means that you basically can't hear anything, and the likelihood of that happening is very low. Some people do have very their hearing loss has been very diminished, right? But when people just pick out of the hat, like I want 50% rating, is not necessarily tied to any kind of criteria that you need to meet for the 50% rating. So I'll show you here, there's a little table, and I'll put it up on the screen too. But there's a little table that shows you what, how the VA rates hearing loss. And it's based off of kind of an intersection between the poorer ear versus the better ear. And based off of it, it gives Roman numerals to assign what each ear is assigned for. And then it says, okay, based off of Roman numeral 1 for the poor ear and Roman numeral 1 for the better ear, you should be assigned a 0% rating. I know that sometimes people feel like, okay, I should get something because I do have hearing loss. That's not the case if you don't rise to the level of a compensable rating. I want to make a little side note about there's exceptional patterns of hearing impairment in 38 CFR section 4.86. And basically it says like, okay, when you have really specific type of hearing loss, then you can get rated differently. And there are certain people that will qualify for that. So if you meet that exception, it would be found in 4.86. I won't go into detail because not a lot of people meet that exception, but pay attention to it. I would say too, if you were looking to get a higher rating, perhaps use an outside audiologist, go to them and have them do the test. Make sure they're doing the Maryland CNC when they're doing the speech recognition for your scores, so that it'd be the apples versus apples comparison, because that's how VA rates. Don't use their own. A lot of audiologists use their own testing. Make sure it's a testing that is recognized by VA. You can bring that in or submit it in with your claim for your increased rating. And if it shows like, okay, this is what the hearing loss is and it differs from VA, then you will get the benefit of the doubt that your hearing is actually more severe as reflected by whatever the private one is. Not to say that VA doesn't have accurate ratings, but I know that you're not precluded from bringing your own evidence. So I would say to do that. So hopefully I provided some clarity about how hearing loss works, how tinnitus works. I know those are pretty popular claims. Hopefully if you're entitled to get those service connected and you get ratings for those, then that'll help you in your overall rating. Let me know any questions below, any other topics you would like me to talk about in the next